Welcome back to the Lake Superior Railroad Museum of the St. Louis County Depot here in downtown Duluth. Today we're going to talk about service and a level of service exemplary. A level of service rarely seen today, but was standard back in the day. And a lot of it happened in train cars just like this. Let me show you. We're back on board the beautiful car Northland, a historic piece of equipment in the collection of the Lake Superior Railroad Museum that is actually working history. And if you'd like to learn more about the car, we did a full episode on it earlier, and you can get all of our episodes in order by going to duluthtrains.com/video tours. But first, we want to remind you that we're hoping you'll become a member of the Lake Superior Railroad Museum to support our efforts of preserving, interpreting, and presenting to the public the history of railroading, especially as it relates to our area. Go to lsrm.org memberships, and there you can sign up to become a member of the Railroad Museum. And when you do, we'll send you a free copy of our Guide to the Museum. This fully illustrated guide, in full color by the way, has every piece of equipment in the museum fully detailed. When you come and visit, which you do for free now that you're a member, you'll know everything about the museum before you get here. Sign up today. That's lsrm.org, and then go to memberships. Our offer ends on Mother's Day, so act today. We were talking about a line of service that is incredible. It's a standard. In fact, it's Pullman Standard. And that's why we're in this Pullman car, to show you just how they did it. That's a little more like it. Something's missing. Oh, I know. Now we're in the mood. I want to talk about the Pullman Company. George Pullman started his company right around the Civil War. And what really made him famous, and his famous Palace Car Company, was the private cars that he made and donated to the Lincoln funeral train. As that train made its way back to Springfield, Illinois from Washington, D.C., millions of people stopped to see it go by. And everyone wanted to ride in those Pullman Palace cars. And that's how his company took off. George Pullman made private cars. Well, wait a minute, before we get into that, I think I need a drink. Somebody will be here shortly, I'm sure. George Pullman made private train cars, but he did more than that. He owned the cars. He didn't sell them to railroads necessarily. He kept them and leased them to railroads. That meant that the people that worked on his Pullman Palace cars were actually Pullman employees, which meant he could control what they did. George Pullman liked that a lot. So the people who were waiting on you in your private car, or waiting on you in the parlor car, or serving you breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or getting your sleeper compartment ready for a good night's sleep on the rails, those were all Pullman employees, just like this gentleman. Sir, may I get you something to drink? I think I'll have a Miller High Life. George Pullman controlled every part of his operation, maniacally if nothing else. And everything had a process. In fact, the process for serving beer was a 12-step program. Not to be confused with other 12-step programs if you've had too many beers, but a 12-step program in how to get ready, serve, and take that beer to the customer. We already had part one. He asked me what I wanted. The rest takes place back in the galley. First, getting a tray, selecting the correct bottle of cold beer, and then having two glasses, a number 11 and a number 12. The number 11 glass is to be filled with crushed ice. We'll see what the number 12 glass does later. Put down a paper napkin and a bottle opener. That completes step number 2. In step number 3, you proceed back to the passenger. You place the tray on the table in front of the passenger. Second, you place the napkin on the table, again in front of the passenger. Step number 6 is to present the beer, label first, to make sure that's the right one that he ordered. Step number 7 is you transfer the ice from the number 11 glass into the number 12 glass. We won't be needing it, but it does properly chill the glass you're going to serve in. Next, in front of the customer, step number 8, open that beer bottle. Step number 9, that's pouring the beer. Hold the glass at a 45-degree angle. Before you're done, turn the glass right side up and pour the last couple of pours in to create what they called a collar. We would refer to it today as head. Now this does two things. One is it releases the aroma of the beer. Step number 10 is place the glass on the napkin in front of the customer. and then place the bottle next to the glass, again with the label facing the customer, so he can refill. And finally, with a smile, depart back to the galley. And that's how Pullman served a beer by the company handbook. But you see, that's how Pullman did everything. Serving the beer was just one example of the level of service demanded of employees who work for the Pullman Company. Everything had to be first class all the way, and by company policy. Now, there would have been a few differences had this really taken place back after the Civil War. Your Pullman porter would have been an African American, and his name would be George, because all Pullman porters were called George, for George Pullman. Many of them were former slaves, so they liked the steady income, but the freedom was nice, but they were really an indentured servant to the Pullman Company. And that caused them to form the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Workers. The Pullman sleeping car attendants formed a first secret union in the railroad industry because of the way they were treated by the Pullman Company. That's a whole other story, and maybe we'll get into it sometime. In the meantime, please join us tomorrow for another exciting episode here from the Lake Superior Railroad Museum. And in the meantime, do what a good Pullman porter would do. Always wash their hands, cover their coughs, don't touch their face, keep that social distance, got to know your place. And finally, let's take care of each other. Have a nice day.